Noir, suspense, hard-boiled fiction. I'm Steve Gomez, mystery writer and chief investigator at the Noir Factory. The biggest names in mystery and suspense walk through our doors. They know the score, and it's my job to find it. Here, we get to the truth, no matter who gets hurt. Welcome to a Noir Factory Interrogation. Will Viharo is a pulp writer of the best sort. And by that I mean he's of singular voice in an art form where guys are tripping all over themselves to sound like someone else. When I recommend Will's work to someone, and that's something I usually do a lot, it's with the understanding that they've done a little bit of reading in the genre, and they're looking for something a little different, something with a little bit of an edge, something that's a little raw. Will's work has been optioned for motion pictures, and his work has wide appeal. But I want to caution you, it won't be featured as a Lifetime Movie of the Week, and I wouldn't donate it to a middle school book drive. In addition to his writing, Will also takes center stage literally in the pulp community. As host and participant of the Noir at the Bar, Seattle and Vancouver, he's helped bring noir fiction to a bunch of people who would otherwise just be sitting around a bar drinking. Will is the author of the soon-to-be-released Vic Valentine, International Man of Misery. Thanks for talking to us today, Will.
Oh, my pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Appreciate it. Now, both of us are, we have just been talking about recent moves from California to Washington.
Right.
So I want to start off with the basics of people who haven't read your stuff yet. What attracts you to the dark and depressing world that is noir?
People who haven't read my stuff yet. So that's about 99.9% of the Earth's population. I don't know if I call my stuff noir in the technical sense. I call it pulp because it's kind of a hybrid of genres. There's noir in there. Some of my stuff is more, quote, noir than others. It depends on how you define noir, and that's a very fluid definition depending on who you're talking to.
It really is.
Eddie Muller, the czar of noir, he once described noir to me as it's when someone knows they're doing something wrong and they do it anyway. And it's because that term was coined by French film critics in the 50s in retrospect, addressing a movement that they saw in post-war American cinema. It's not very clearly defined like, say, horror or sci-fi or even mystery. So noir, most people think of it as dark and depressing. So yeah, that's my stuff in a lot of ways. But I also have a very irreverent, tongue-in-cheek sense of humor, which I blend in, and the main source of material for my fiction is my life. So I tap into the darker aspects of some of my experiences, but I leaven it with a sense of humor, which is the only way I'm still here. So I don't know. I'm drinking a Moscow Mule because it's atypically hot here in Washington, as you know. I moved here from California to escape the heat, and in typical noir fashion, my past caught up with me. But yeah, I call it pulp because it's a blend of genres as opposed to straight up noir.
I think it certainly fits you. You definitely have a darker aspect to it, and I also like the, as you mentioned, fluidity of noir. You can use certain things, especially with film, to narrow it down. Mm-hmm. But I think, particularly in literature, it does take a more fluid aspect.
Well, you know what? When you talk to crime fiction authors, and I never consider myself a, quote, crime author per se. My Vic Valentine series is probably the closest to what you call a conventional mystery, although even those are unconventional. Mm-hmm. But the thing about noir is not a marketable genre. I mean, when you market your stuff as noir, that's one of the least selling subcategories of crime fiction, because most people don't know it when they see it. They don't even know how to describe it. So if you call something a mystery or a thriller or espionage or hard-boiled, even Private Eye, they know what that is. Noir is a little more elusive, so it's not a great marketing term. But everyone seems to use it because it's very trendy, and it has a long history. So people like being associated with it, even if it's not lucrative for the mass audience. So I don't really consider myself a noir guy. per se, like I said, but the darkness in my books comes from my life. Like my mother, for instance, who has influenced a lot of my fiction, either directly or indirectly. She was a schizophrenic. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 22 years old, when I was in her womb.
Oh, wow.
I don't think there was a direct biological connection, but she was Miss Houston in 1960, and she was an aspiring actress. She met my father at the University of Texas, then went to New York to become actors together, and then her illness kicked in when I was conceived. So recently I wrote a novella called Things I Do When I'm Awake. That is the one work of mine that is most directly influenced by her. Even though it's not biographical by any stretch. It's basically a kind of impressionistic fever dream. That kind of like it's how I would interpret her madness. I mean, I haven't experienced it except as collateral damage, and I didn't know her that well. I've only spent a very little time with her as an adult. She actually passed away while I was writing it last year. She was in a Florida state ward. So when someone says noir, that's noir. My mother is the most noir person I've ever met. She's the most tragic figure I've ever known. So, to me, it's not a marketing term anymore. It's when you say dark, I mean that's noir. A lot of people think of noir as people, well-dressed people, with snappy patter, and then things go sour at the end. And then a lot of people say private detective novels aren't noir because the private eye ends up okay in the end. Like if you end up alive, it's not noir. But a lot of classic noir, largely due to the codes back then and just pandering to mainstream audiences in general, had happy endings. Like completely without any credibility. Like things would just turn out okay for the main protagonist. So I don't even know. Like I said, the parameters are so ill-defined and fluid. It's hard to say something's noir and something isn't. So when I got back into writing 7 years ago after giving it up for a while when I hosted Thrillville, which you know about, I didn't realize there was a subcategory of pulp out there either. And a lot of people think of pulp to think of Doc Savage or The Shadow, which is stuff I grew up reading. Pulp to me is kind of like the literary equivalent of grindhouse cinema. It's just it's exploitation, and it's appealing to a lot of our baser instincts with a lot of sex and violence. So I'm blending those sensibilities with more literary aspirations. So my stuff has an emotional resonance and a dramatic heft that you wouldn't find in like just exploitation cinema by itself. So because like I said, I'm adding in my own life experience. So it's hard for me to define my stuff. I've called it Vihara, but which is cool. I mean, I like the fact that I'm hard to pigeonhole, but at the same time, it's very hard to market something like that when you're your own genre. I mean, my favorite artist in general is David Lynch, and he's kind of his own genre. Like, I mean, the term Lynchian is a phrase people use to describe something. And I don't have his level of exposure or fame, but I didn't aspire to particularly be that elusive, but that's how I am because I'm just being myself, and everyone's an individual, but I'm very uninhibited about it. And then I'm blending that with my sensibilities culled from many, many years of watching and hosting B-movies. So when you put all that together, you've got Thrillville, and Thrillville is now the home base for my fiction, my pulp fiction.
Yeah, but I've noticed that your audience is very dedicated to you, and that is certainly, definitely, I would think of you as kind of a fusion artist if you don't take that as an insult in any way.
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. No, that's a compliment.
In fact, when I go to describe your work to someone who's never read anything like it, I will usually use the term something akin to gonzo pulp.
Yes, that's what I call it. Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah, because it's kind of like if Hunter S. Thompson wrote exploitation, or Charles Bukowski, although he wrote his last novel was called Pulp. Exactly, because it's very personal to me. But if you don't know me personally, you won't see that influence. On the surface, it looks very exploitative and sensational because of all the sex and violence. But beneath it, right beneath the surface is a lot of emotionalism and just questioning about life. And, my main themes throughout all my work have been loneliness and, the desire to connect with someone and, just figuring out why we're here and, the basics.
The big questions.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me is the mystery. That's the mystery in my Vic Valentine series. It's really the big mystery. It's not the story, the plots are kind of incidental. My Vic Valentine novels are really about Vic Valentine. Like the circumstances change a lot since I've been writing about him for so long, but he's always a constant because that's really his quest. That's what motivates him. That's his impetus. Is what the hell's going on? Is the big mystery. Yeah. So anyway, I think I lost the thread there.
Well, that's okay. Actually, it kind of dovetails into my next question really well. It's almost like you were looking over my shoulder. And that is, you have that outsider quality to your writing. And you mentioned some of this, and you've already explained. I want to know if you can kind of expand on it. How did you develop that outsider voice, and who, you mentioned a couple names, who do you think are the big influences for you?
Okay, well, I mentioned David Lynch, but if I have an outsider influence, it's because I'm just being myself, straight up, unfiltered, without regard for what other people think of me. I don't have an agenda. I don't have any ambition to be rich and famous. I'm just expressing myself. This is my reaction to my life circumstances, which are bizarre. As I've explained a little bit about my mother, but other things too. Recently, I was watching a special feature on a Blu-ray of a Jess Franco film. Jess Franco was a filmmaker from Spain, although he made most of his movies elsewhere in Europe because of censorship in Spain in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Mm-hmm. I related strongly to, he made like 200 films and, acquired taste to say the least. A lot of eroticism, a lot of horror, a lot of but what I related to about him was someone was describing him as being this iconoclast. Like, he just does what he wants to do, and he doesn't care about what anyone else thinks. He's got this vision, and he found a way to actually make it happen and get financing and make 200 films and get them cast and get them out there. But like I said, he wasn't trying to make statements about society, like serious film statements about society, because he hated society. He was antisocial. He didn't care what people thought. And that's just how I am. I don't want to insult anyone. It's not like I care what my wife thinks. I care what my cats think. I care what my friends think. I don't want to offend them or alienate them. But I just, at a certain point when you're a writer, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Hardly anyone reads. Do I want to make money? If that's the case, then you really have to pander. You have to study what the mainstream market demands, and you have to create a product that satisfies that desire, which can change on a dime. I mean, the public is very fickle. My motivation to write really comes from someplace deep inside of me. It's a survival instinct. It's my reaction to my life. I've been on my own since I was 16. I had a very rocky childhood. It was just my way of surviving, and it's my creative sublimation of my experiences in life. So I have had strong ambition. I had a New York agent for years. Judith Regan, who was a celebrity editor, courted me for a couple of years. It went nowhere. Christian Slater, as you know, optioned my novel Love Stories Are Too Violent for me. In the end, a lot of these people had interest in me, and then they let me down. So I really, at a certain point when I hit 50, I just decided to take the reins of my own quote-unquote career in my own hands and just do my own thing. And I republished a lot of my old works through my old imprint, Thrillville Press. And Thrillville is my brand name, as you know, from the cult movie Cabaret I hosted for many years.
Oh, yeah, fond memories of that.
Right. So at this point, I just don't care. I mean, it's like I've been published by small presses that went belly up, and then there was a whole drama with this double life press, and I'm not even going to get into it. And it's just every time I put my fate into someone else's hands, it's gone bad. So I really just want to do things for myself. I write for myself, and I put it out there. I let people know it's out there, and they can take it or leave it. I have a number of short stories coming out from different publishers, which I'm very proud of. But the editors contacted me. They were solicited. I'm not pitching anything. I'm Vic Valentine, International Man of Misery. I'm putting out through Thrillville Press. It's really out there. I don't know if anyone else will publish it, and I don't care. even if another small press or medium-sized press wanted to publish it, I mean, if they went belly up, it would get back to me anyway, and I have access to the same tools that they do. You know, a lot of these small presses publish through CreateSpace on Amazon. I can do what they can do as far as publishing goes.
In fact, right now it's kind of the golden age of you creating, taking control of your own destiny.
True, but there is, despite what people have said, there is a stigma attached to self-publishing, even with your peers. So I have a mix. I have a couple books out from Gutter. We published Love Stories Are Too Violent for Me. Editor Joe Clifford, who's a rising author in his own right, he's their acquisitions editor over there. He contacted me. I didn't even know who he was when the movie deal was really hot. So we republished Love Stories Are Too Violent for Me. The storyboard artist for the movie did the cover depicting Christian as my protagonist, Vic Valentine. And then they also published my latest Vic Valentine novel, Hard Boiled Heart, in 2015, which was directly inspired by the failure of the movie deal, which is in perpetual stasis right now. So, but at this point, I didn't even try to pitch the new Vic Valentine book elsewhere. I mean, I wasn't even going to write another Vic Valentine book, but I was asked to be an instructor at a writer's retreat in Costa Rica earlier this year, and I went down there. And everything that happens to me goes into my book. So whatever is going on in my life somehow inspires a book. And I couldn't stop thinking it would be so funny to put Vic Valentine in Costa Rica. So I did. So I'm just now wrapping that one up. So I have no plans for another book. It depends on what happens to me. I don't write because I'm like, I'm going to study the trends and write a book that will appeal to people who like this kind of thing. That's not what motivates me, and I'm comfortable with that now. I'm like, I write for myself. It's like my wife Monica said, Monica Tiki Goddess, as you know from Thrillville, in that documentary, The Thrill Is Gone. She said, a businessman finds out what people want and they give it to them. Mm-hmm. But what I do, and what a lot of artists do, is they do what they want to do and then find other people who like what they do. And that's a lot harder. But it's more satisfying artistically. And also, I don't know any other way. I don't know how to just fake it and just do something that I wouldn't enjoy myself.
Well, actually, I'm looking very forward to International Man of Misery. I'd like to see how that turns out for Vic Valentine.
It's funny. It's wild. It's wild. I mean, I'm having a blast writing it. So I'll send you a copy, Steve.
Oh, great. Look forward to it. Now, I wanted to change gears a little bit. And since you've been up here, you've been pulling kind of double duty. I know you're not doing too much Noir at the Bar in Vancouver, but
I'm in charge of Noir at the Bar Seattle. I was a guest at Noir at the Bar Vancouver.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
I was a guest author. No, I'm organizer and host of Noir at the Bar Seattle because the founder, Michael Poole, moved to Denver, and now he's hosting Noir at the Bar Denver. So he asked me to take over, so I've been doing it for a little over a year now.
Oh, nice. Well, I was going to ask, how did you find your place there? And for those poor souls who don't frequent bars or go to live readings, can you tell us what we would expect at Noir at the Bar?
Well, Noir at the Bar is a national kind of franchise, and I just happen to be lucky enough to be in charge of the local chapter. It's really informal. It's just authors getting together and reading in a bar, and it's not like I used to host a movie night at Forbidden Island Tiki Lounge in Alameda. It's not like you're imposing something on people who are already there. They know it's coming. Mm-hmm. When I hosted a movie night, I would just turn on a movie, and some people came to see it, and some people just happened to be there. It's kind of like that at Noir at the Bar, but people actually are quiet when the authors read. So for me, it's a great networking opportunity. I get to meet a lot of authors I wouldn't otherwise meet because they come up here, and a lot of local authors. It's really fun for the audience if you're a fan of crime fiction or fiction in general, because you get to meet and mingle with these authors, and the author bring copies of their books to sign and sell. And this Saturday, August 5th, I'm doing kind of a special. Usually Noir at the Bar Seattle seasonal. Mm-hmm. Just had our summer edition, but we're doing. I had a number of LA authors that I knew, like Danny Gardner and Sarah M. Chen, who wanted to come up to Noir at the Bar Seattle, but they couldn't make it on the dates I had booked. So I decided to just do a special kind of one-off of LA versus Seattle. So I've got a bunch of authors from LA flying up Saturday, and they're going to square off, so to speak, with some local authors. LA, I've got Sarah M. Chen, Ashley Irwin, Downey Gardner, James Quealy, Josh Stallings, and Holly West, who are all popular names in the genre. And for Seattle, on our team, we've got Scotty Andrews, Nick Feldman, Pierce Hansen, Kat Richardson, Brian Thornton. Tracy Weber can't make it, so Jim Thompson is going to step in. So it's really fun, but it's also a great networking opportunity, and the venue's perfect. It's the Dunbar Room at the Hotel Sorrento in Seattle, which is right on the edge of Capitol Hill in downtown. Oh. And it's a really classy joint, and I do it really just for the networking, but for fans of this stuff, it's just a great informal, casual, comfortable way to meet your favorite authors. So, and most venues where they do Noir at the bar, of course, they're bars. They have food and drinks and stuff, so you can have a whole night out. And the mission for the readings itself is always free. So, there you go.
So I picked the wrong Saturday to be in Seattle, man. I'm kind of bummed about that.
Oh, well, next one is October 12th, and it's going to be mostly female authors and a Halloween theme.
Well, I'll put that on my calendar then.
It's always at the Dunbar Room at the Hotel Sorrento. So, and there's also a Noir at the Bar Seattle Facebook page. Most cities have a Noir at the Bar, and they all have Facebook pages. So just type in where you're near a city and Noir at the Bar, and something will probably pop up.
Awesome. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, too, is you mentioned, Los Angeles versus Seattle. You'll see how that shakes out. But we're both have spent time in the Bay Area and San Francisco.
Right.
San Francisco has its own really unique identity when it comes to mystery, when it comes to hard-boiled, when it comes to noir.
Oh, absolutely. Outside of Florida, I'd say it's the most notable area for that genre.
Well, how would you spent some time in Seattle now, how would you classify that vibe? How would you classify that feel of the city versus, other cities?
I kind of came up to be a recluse, so I didn't get out much. I didn't get out that much in the Bay Area. It's a little more vibrant in the Bay Area, but Seattle is also a lot more casual and laid back than the Bay Area. I mean, people think of California as laid back. You know what laid back is until you come to Seattle. Like all this smoke in the air right now, it might be partly wildfires, but it's also probably marijuana smoke. I mean, people are just really laid back up here, which is what I like. It's not as competitive or as cutthroat, certainly not as much as L.A. As you go further north up the coast, things get more and more, peaceful and casual, it seems. But on the flip side, it doesn't have that dynamic energy that the Bay Area has. People here are just so nice. Everyone kind of does their own thing, and maybe there is an edge to it. I haven't felt it, but then again, I don't. Other than Noir at the Bar Seattle and walking dogs, I don't, get out that much.
I think you still get out more than I do.
I'm trying not to, but just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in or pull me back out. I'm already thinking about having a Bay Area versus quote unquote Seattle Noir at the Bar next year because there's so many authors. I know so many of them like Joe Clifford and Rob Pierce and Mike Eaton actually lives up here now. There's just so many of them down there. So I'm thinking of doing that next year. And this, like I said, the LA versus Seattle thing just happened to accommodate a bunch of LA writers I know who wanted to come up here and read it more at the bar. So, it'll be a lot of fun if nothing else.
Excellent. Okay, now you mentioned this also, too, about noir kind of being the kiss of death for some marketability. Even talking with other writers, I've noticed that it seems more of a sensibility that works really well than a revival piece. For instance, you'll see some movies that really just take a nosedive by daring to place their story in the 1930s and 40s. How do you see that into modern art? Is that shaking out as that, or will there be some revival, do you think, of 30s and 40s and other eras?
No. And when I say that is, when you say noir now to most contemporary crime authors, they're not thinking of the 30s and 40s. A lot of them don't even know the origin of that phrase. I don't mean that as a slight, but it goes back so far. Noir is just a niche now. It's a catchphrase that's become very trendy, even if it's not that popular with the mainstream public. The first thing I thought of when you said that was L.A. Confidential, the film adaptation, which is 20 years ago this year.
Yeah, it's easy to think of that as something that's modern.
Well, the reason I think of that, though, is because they made a conscious decision for the actors not to wear hats because they didn't want to alienate modern audiences by being too inaccessible period-wise, like just looking too different.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And that's 20 years ago. And that's the lounge and swing revival was very, very popular. I was into that. I was into it before it was popular, though. So I think I don't know. Eddie Muller hosts Noir Alley and TCM, and they're consciously trying to appeal to a younger audience. I don't know. It just seems a lot of people I meet under 40 or 30, they're really interested in what's going on now, and I think that's why a lot of authors who write noir, they write contemporary fiction. They want to have the same sensibilities, but without seeming dated. And some things don't date. I mean, desperation doesn't date. I mean, that's a constant in human experience. The things that really make noir outside of the superficial style are still with it, more than ever, really. I mean, in a lot of ways. So I think that's what connects people to that kind of material and why people don't want to date it by setting it back in the day. But then you get someone like Danny Gardner, who his novel Negro and No Fay has just been republished down and out, whose book, that's set in the 50s, but it has a lot of contemporary resonance because he's dealing with a lot of issues of race and stuff like that. Even though he's doing it kind of, he's not doing it overtly. It's kind of subliminal. Walter Mosley does the same thing with his Easy Rollins series. So there's a way to set something in the past that still resonates with the present, and that's the trick, is to make it so that people can still connect to it, because people like things they can relate to. Most of my stuff is set contemporarily, but it has a lot of retro references that for a lot of people are probably new, but you can Google it and they don't even know what I'm talking about. But it doesn't matter because it's happening now, and emotions in it are timeless. They're universal. So when you're talking about the human condition, that's not constricted to a time period. So the rest of it is just window dressing, and some people put off by it, some people are attracted to it. But if you make the core of it timeless by just appealing to the human struggle, I don't think it really matters. But it's harder to do if you're framing it within a period piece, depending on the period.
Yeah, that's true. You are kind of not hobbling yourself, but you are already alienating a bit of your audience right off the bat. Yeah, kind of. Like I said, it depends. I mean, people go by word of mouth. I mean, that's the best way to promote your book. I mean, more than reviews, more than anything else, is word of mouth. So if audiences, if a certain set of readers get hooked into something, like, say, Negro and No Fay, and they spread the word, people will overlook that. But you're right, initially, it can be a barrier, but it depends on current trends. Like Game of Thrones has made anything with sword and sandals and Dungeons and Dragons very appealing, although that has a much broader appeal anyway than, say, noir. Because noir is dark, it is depressing, and it kind of reveals and unearths a lot of truths about us that most people don't want to think about when they're just reading for escapism. Fair enough. And also, speaking of word of mouth, that is Vic Valentine, International Man of Misery. And when should we look for that?
This fall, later this fall.
Okay. Where would you like us where would you like our audience to find you on the internet?
Everything you'd want to know about me and more is at thrillville.net.
Oh, great. We'll go ahead and put a link to that in our show notes. But really, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to leave our audience with?
Just stay cool.
Harder to do right now. But thank you very much for making time, and I really look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it, man. Cheers.
All right, cheers. That's it for this Noir Factory interrogation. Join us again next week as we take a hard look at noir, true crime, and hard-boiled fiction. Good night.